mothers whether they considered themselves their daughter's best friends, their reaction would be in their faces, in their bodies, and they would go, no. But the daughters kind of found it a wonderful idea. So we wanted to explore the notion of whether daughters and mothers could be best friends.
Their conclusion?
They get married later. They have children later.
I mean, in my generation, we got married at 22 years old on an average. And so we were out of the house quickly, and we were married. And that created a clear boundary between us and our mothers. Well, that boundary doesn't exist anymore. So we graduate from college, we may move back home, we're getting a job, and we still have a lot of similar time and a lot of shared time to spend with our mothers.
But even if the relationship is long distance, social media such as Facebook and Twitter can make it seem as though the other person is as close as the nearest computer.
Technology plays a big role in the relationship. It's part of the reason that we have the shrinking of the generation gap. It's also given our kids the feeling that we are their own personal concierge. So what you'll get is you'll get somebody, and this has actually happened, who's on her way to class in school and will call her mother and say, could you go online and look in the syllabus and see what room my class is in? So technology gives you the feeling that you have a safety net at all times, and that it's almost like you have your mom in your pocket.
While the authors believe friendship between mother and daughter should be nurtured, they also make a clear distinction between supporting and enabling.
I don't think that what I'm describing necessarily keeps your daughters from becoming adult. I do think that you need to look at the boundaries and see if you are impeding your daughter, if you're enabling her to stay a child. The problem is a lot of mothers don't realize that the way they're loving their daughters, the way we love, may sometimes be keeping our daughters younger.
You have 3 daughters. What are you doing to them to make sure that they, you know, to enforce a boundary?
I always remind them, I'm not your friend, I'm your mother. I give you instructions that you are to follow. You know, it's very challenging these days when you see mothers and daughters. It's one thing to have friendships and go to the movies and go to dinner together, but when mothers are dressing like their daughters, and when mothers are posting on their, not just their daughters, but their sons' Facebook accounts, and, oh, what a cute, I mean, you need to have a separation. You need to know who's the adult in charge and who's the child. And once somebody gets over the age of 30 or 40 or something like that, you can have a closer friendship where you can discuss intimate details. But with young girls, I mean, you know, talking about their entire adolescence and telling their mothers everything, I think there's some harm in that. You have to learn how to grow up. People do need to realize there are boundaries in these relationships, and you can't be best friends all the time.
I think this is a combination of later marriage on the part of young women and overlapping adulthood, mothers who refuse to grow up, or is it grow old, who want to be like their daughters, who think that now, especially the baby boom generation, is not supposed to age. Remember that. And one way to think you're not aging is to become your daughter's best friend.
Oh, well said.
Won't work.
Well said.
It's not only mothers and daughters. I mean, as you were saying with the Facebook page. I mean, you know, this is an old enabling. The son was the way it was traditionally done. You know, mama's boys, and you know, in Italy, it's a whole culture. You know, they call these guys the mamoni. You know, so there's a long tradition of this, and I do agree that today it's maybe we've only extended that to treat the girls the same way. But I don't want to be my daughter's pal. I mean, you have to have those boundaries and the authority. I mean, that's what's changed, is women now don't always want to be, for whatever reason, they're trying to stay young. They don't want to establish themselves as the authority figure with their child, which is really, the kids crave those boundaries, and that's what they want.
I think what's interesting is why we are where we are. Our parents' generation did never treat us like best friends forever. And our kids will have best friends forever, but they're only going to have one mother. And the discipline, I think you're right. Somebody who says no, 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 and backs up no, that's not a best friend. That's what a mother is supposed to do, within, of course, the bounds of unconditional love.
But 2 things I wanted to point out that are going on simultaneously here. We started on the show doing all these stories 10 years ago about kids graduating college, moving back home, or you know, even when they marry, living with the parents for a while so they can save for a house and that sort of thing. So that's going on simultaneously, and I wonder how much it's contributing to this kind of overemphasis on mother-daughter relationships?
Well, if you take a look at the research, it says that in every recession that we've had, there's been a larger percentage of kids moving in with their parents in their 20s and 30s, typically if they're single, but in rare circumstances these days, you're seeing married couples moving in with somebody's parents because of the financial strain. I think it does underscore the blurring of the lines. We've got a meshing of cultures and the meshing of generations, so to speak. And where do you all fit? Does everybody fit in? If you've got a 35-year-old adult, child living with you, do you tell them that their curfew is 11 o'clock? I don't think so. But does that mean that they can have wild parties with their friends till 2 o'clock in the morning in your household? No. It is all about boundaries, and it is about respecting each other once you get beyond a certain age. But again, you have to know when to stop and when not to push it too far.
And if you've become emotionally dependent on your daughter for your happiness, it's very hard for you to say no, no, no. And that's a big danger.
And that's a normative progression. Child's authority figure, mother. The older the child gets, the more likely it is that you can strike up a friendship relationship that is healthy. But what happens in older age is that the parents, the mother, becomes more dependent on the child.
Right.
And if you see that progression, then you can see that we're crossing the boundary if, when the kid is 13, she and I are hanging out together at the soda shop.
Checking out her boyfriend.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for Solution to the Contrary. Next week, getting rid of toxic friendships. Please join us on the web for To the Contrary Extra. And whether your views are in agreement or to the contrary, please join us next time.
Funding for To the Contrary provided by the MetLife Foundation. Planning for the future.
Someday, cars will use infrared to monitor the driver's face and alert them when they're not paying attention to the road ahead. The first ever HS Hybrid from Lexus.
Additional funding provided by the Colcom Foundation, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, and by the Charles A. Freoff Foundation. For videotapes of To the Contrary, please contact Federal News Service at 1-888-343-1940.
We are PBS.